now the next speaker, I'm personally a huge fan of hers. That is, you must be seeing her since morning. She's always been with us. That is Dr. Manjula Pooja Shroff, MD and CEO, Calorx Group. Am I pronouncing it right? Yeah. So she has a very interesting background. Mostly, she's an ideal leader. An edupreneur, Dr. Manjula Pooja Shroff is regarded by many as the change agent for schooling in the state of Gujarat. As CEO of Calorx, she has been instrumental in founding and managing several premier schools. Calorx, since its inception in 1995, is a name synonymous to professionalism and excellence in schooling. It has under its umbrella the Delhi Public Schools, Calorx Olive International School at Ahmedabad, and Calorx Public School across the western belt of India, with 40+ educational institutions. Calorx has recently forayed into international territory with fresh footprints in the UAE. Calorx is recognized as a quality-conscious group with a focus on innovation and use of technology in learning. Dr. Manjula Pooja Shroff also holds an additional portfolio as an independent director at Gujarat Gas Company Limited, EIMCO Elcon India Limited, and Sabarmati Gas Limited. Her concern for the marginalized and those with special learning needs is evident through the projects Vezamo Kids and Prerna, a school for dyslexic. Ladies and gentlemen, please, with a round of applause, welcome Dr. Manjula Pooja Shroff.
Good afternoon. Am I audible there? Great. I know Geeta's not in the room, but I have to thank her for giving me such a awake audience. Like she said, it's really, really ideal post-lunch. So I know we're all here as educators. We've contributed to the state of education in our country for many, many years. I have to, unfortunately, since I'm talking about regulations, it's going to be kind of a serious kind of a talk, because regulations in our country today are not so happy. Many of us as school owners are actually wondering if we're in the right field. And I'll tell you why that's happening. Take some statistics. In Delhi, in the past 3 odd years, no new schools have come up. In Gujarat, this year, we registered almost 30% less registrations for new schools. This is the statutory part of it. I'm not even going into the challenges that AI and all of that is going to throw at us as educators. Let me just stay to regulation, which is my topic. So, when you think of regulation, it's really not necessarily a bad word. But the latest incidents, which focus on school owners, school principals, senior educators, the kind of media hype, the kind of go-to-jail statements, and we're wondering, where did we go wrong? We have provided, when I say we, private education has provided the bedrock of this country. Today, everybody, name it, from a lawyer to a doctor to a politician to a pilot to a businessman to a scientist, to a footballer, is a product of your and my schools. Then where did we go wrong? Why are we being targeted? So before I come back to some of my thoughts on those, I want to quickly look through what has worked for regulation. Right from independence, if some of us will jog our memories and go into Kothari Commission report, a lot of things happened right. So universalization of primary education, the 3-language formula, English, Hindi, and the regional language, or even focus on agriculture, industrial, all of that is good. Just think of universalization of primary education and what it did to the country. Way back during independence, we didn't even have less than 10% of literacy. Today, many states boast of 70%, 80%. Kerala almost there, 95%. it's a whole different conversation as to what is literacy. Because if you can read, write, and understand any language in India, you're literate. But that does not get us bread and butter. It's because of this loose definition of literacy, it's because of this lack of quality in government schools that private schools started to thrive. It was a need-based thing. It's not like private schools came and took over. Today, 43% of the millions of children that go to school study in private school. Why? In the world, you don't have such a skewed balance. In the world, most of the children go to government schools. Few children go to private schools. India is unique. 43%, it's like 50% of the population are with us, simply because of lack of quality in government schools. Let's look at further some things that worked. So further in the, later on, we started to talk about in the 60s and 70s, vocationalization of secondary education. That's also when the NCRT got formed, SCRT got formed, UGC got formed. All of these are working well in the right direction. Some of you will remember the latest changes in the CBSE. All of that is actually, the CCE, which is not going to work anymore, it was such a good tool. The continuous evaluation of children, such a good tool. So what happened? Since the government schools were not functioning and the private schools were, RT was born out of that. So in a certain sense, the private schools were given the responsibility of the public schools or government schools. Today, there is talk in Delhi about RTE not being enforced. There are two things, the detention policy. In RT, you couldn't fail kids till 8th grade, remember? But now that has been reversed. 5th grade and 8th grade, you can detain children. That was the first change to RTE. There is talk about RTE no longer being enforced as strongly as what? Why? Why do regulations keep changing so often that we can't even keep up with the regulations? We don't even remember what's the latest. So, children are not going to government schools, they prefer to come to. I mean, think about it. Your ayah, your sweeper, your driver's kids also go to private schooling. And when I say private schooling, I'm not talking about schools that charge 40K. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 schools, private schools. Just because everybody doesn't have trust anymore in the public school or the government school system. The midday meals at least arrested children not going to school. So you have lack of motivation, election duties, school teacher absenteeism. You know how this whole thing works outside. So there were so many freebies, right, that the government kept offering for government schools to increase the standard of education. And what's not happening, which is where the private schools moved in. Every time there's a regulation, private schools respond. So you remember the Inclusion Act, where the right for every special child to be educated. Private school moved in and started to do stuff about it. If regulations have been working, right, primary universalization has worked, inclusion has worked, RTE has worked to a certain extent, EWS works in some states, then what is really going wrong? Sometimes regulation is not a bad word, sometimes it's a huge threat. What is really going on in a country? Why is today India is the largest population of school kids? Largest. Why is this whole system not working? I mean, when you think of it for a minute, it's not just India, it's the world. Because every 6th person in the world is an Indian. And so if we don't do our primary education right, every 6th person in the world is going to get impacted from the lack of it. In my mind, a couple of things, about 2 months ago, I think, I made a presentation to the Secretary of MHRD and the Chairperson of CBSE. We were thinking about a whole bunch of things that are not working. We were also saying that private industry has to get a boost. I will come to the much talked about fee regulation of Gujarat. I'll end there. But first, let me walk you down about what kind of recommendations we made to the government. It's very expensive to create schools. Land is an impossible commodity. When CBSE says your grade 1 to 12 has to be in the same campus, where do you get 2 acres of land or 1 acre of land in the heart of Bangalore? If you move away, it's a catch-22, you don't get children. So we started to tell CBSE that maybe you should, like the rest of the world, maybe you should allow separate campuses. So 1 to 5 can be in a separate campus, 6 to 10, or maybe 6 to 12. And please don't give composite affiliations, give separate affiliations. That's one of the recommendations we've made. Another recommendation we've made is please allow multiple boards in a campus. So please allow IB with CBSE. You do know that CBSE-I has been withdrawn. So there is this huge talk we are talking about being part of the world and bringing about international education, but our own system is not ready for it. So if CBSE-I is not ready, at least allow our campuses to have IGCSE, Pearson, Edexcel, name it. That's the second recommendation. The third one, which is the most critical one, you know why this word private school is so wrong today in this country? Is because we are considered commercial people. Money is a dirty word in education. Schools ko paisa nahi banana chahiye. Now you know why? It's only a perception. When private companies make money, they're applauded. It's called productivity. It's called efficiency. It's called huge profit margins. When private schools make money, we are thefts, we are cheaters, we are mafias, we are God knows, but we are bad people. You know why? Fundamentally in this country, schools are supposed to be operated by trusts and societies and non-for-profit. Which is where our third recommendation to the government, please allow, like the rest of the world, companies to run schools. And then profit is not a bad word. And then market forces will play. If you're a good school, if you can justify the fees you're going to charge, people will come to you. Otherwise, they won't come to you. As simple as that. Let the market forces play. Why does it have to be regulated? We'll see what's happening, but let me tell you, in the corridors of power in Delhi, these are not suggestions that are not being accepted. We're actually openly talking about it. If ever we come to a state, you know, some states allow it. Haryana allows it. Allows companies to start to, operate schools. There, commercialization or profit is not a bad word. So these are the things that we've started to talk. Now quickly let me come to what Gujarat did. It actually struck this whole thing about commercialization. I don't know how many of you followed Gujarat, but let me tell you this, that Gujarat is saying that for primary school, for grade 1 to 5, you can charge only 15,000 rupees per annum. All inclusive. All inclusive. For 6 to 10, you can charge 25,000 rupees per annum. And 11th and 12th, if it is commerce and humanitarian, 25. If it's science, 27. All inclusive. Now, you know that in this room, that you cannot provide quality education and 15,000 rupees per annum. No admission fee, no book fees, no nothing. We have some statistics that even government sometimes charges more than 15,000 rupees per annum. Now, that is one of the things that was very, very troublesome. The second thing is, fees cannot be increased for 3 years. You have to stay at the same fee for 3 years. No 10% rise every year. And the whole act is quite silent on quality. So some people who went to the fee regulation to justify the fees were asked questions to this extent about why do you have 30 children in a class, combine 2 classes, and do away with the teacher? have 45 children in a class and bring down your cost. Charge only 15,000. They were told that if you've taken bank interest, you've taken bank loan and you have to pay interest, you can't charge interest. It's a disallowable expenditure. Now, these are things that will stifle private schooling. Because you know that money, if you borrow money, you have to pay interest. So what is happening in Gujarat is almost all the private schools are currently in High Court. The act is being challenged. The judgment is still awaited and is possibly go further to Supreme Court. But I do believe that we have some precedents in Tamil Nadu having gone the same way and several other states. But this is only giving you the situation. My prayer would be that, and I really do believe that education is so important to any development. Primary education especially is so fundamental to any development that if India has aims of being anything close to a superpower, we cannot ignore education. Which means that if 43% of school-going children, some 300 million children are in private education, that industry will have to be given its place under the sun. So regulations are bound to balance. While I am here to give you some information, I do not in any way want to alarm you. I believe that there are many federations, there are many associations working for this cause. We talk to the right people, we talk to the policymakers, and let me tell you that policymakers do understand our position. And we are very, very hopeful that in the future, in the immediate future, some balance will strike. And we will come back to having a certain sense of pride. Today, that pride is no longer there. It's almost as if we are on the wrong side of the fence. So having said that, let's just, wherever you are, it's important that we enlist parents. Parents know the importance and the degree difference that private schools do to their children. Let nobody take it for granted, because you and everybody else work every day to make that difference. What Geeta said earlier, you're making that little shift in storytelling, and that's the difference in education. And that's not going to come in a government school. So whoever you are, wherever you are, you have to be aware of your environment. You're part of the education environment, fraternity. Regulation will impact you directly or indirectly someday. Be aware, be spokespeople. Don't be alarmed. My intention is absolutely not to alarm. My intention is to inform. My intention is to create groups so that we will be heard. We make good representations. We speak to the... I know that your state, Karnataka, is one of the finest places. Easy regulations. I know that some South Indian states are ahead of the curve. But states like UPs, like Gujarat, we're still struggling with some regulations. So it was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. And these opportunities are very, very important to keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shroff. It is indeed a pleasure to hear about regulations when I've been writing a lot about regulations, especially after talking to our MHRD minister, Mr. Prakash Javadekar. However, I mean, we really look forward to some changes, to some real good write-ups that we all can do together so that it affects the regulatory boards. So now I would like to request Mr. Premchand Paleti on stage to give out some awards, to give out some special awards to schools. May I also have Mr. Harish on stage and Mr. Francis Joseph. On stage to award some schools.